大佬怎么不回我信？
我不上这个。
那我就凉了。那就抱大佬大腿。
这不是跟人家在一起上的？
是，4790。我操！他这边投影变好了，你觉得？原来没这么亮，
原来没这么清楚啊。
哎，真恶心嘛！这个教室上课。没有吧，90个人，差不多。第一节课没上的多呀，后面都不来了，8人课谁能来？谁呢？坐第一排，你坐第一排。好像堵我了呀，没看见，要不坐那儿？啊，要不你坐他旁边，你坐，现在坐这。可以坐那儿。Great.
This is Q396 of my neighbor. We start today's lecture presentation from Trina. So while we're just getting set up, I would like you all to stand and introduce yourself to your neighbors. Stand up! Stand up!
干嘛？
不知道，
施老师真有意思。加个微信。
哎，报群了以后可以。
加个微信呀。
加微信来。
以后抱大腿。
以后可以抱大腿。
以后都是大腿。
你看这个就是大腿。
都是大腿，其实很看。
你们都大3吗？
对。
今年大2的。
我们都大4了。
大4了。
马上。
对。哎 ，How you motherfucker？
扫我吧，你都扫我，你就不用扫，
我就不用扫你，扫你干嘛？
扫。对，大腿是大腿。
行吧。
都是大4吧？
大3。
大3上这门课不是 on 的吗？那你们很屌吗？
没有，这个课好像没有钱。
对，没钱，
是没钱。
我前一天才报上。
这节课好像，因为这可能是因为这个点。
扫大腿。
你现在报的人好像就是少一点。
拉个群。
我早上8点的课是真是。It's 12 in the morning, fucker. What the fuck？ 哎，这完了可以做的蛮真累吧？你还是 WeChat？
所以我们是不是可以坐下？
你动那个3回唱题，
不让做。拉个群。
哎，没呀，
都是大腿了。
大学回来。
大师没回来，大师不理我。
大师是不是说哎呀还没起来呀？我操！
这个太简单了。
啊，
没事，我给你们拉个群，不用着急。你是啥？What the hell？
What the hell？
行。改个名字，我。
Okay, please give your attention to Katrina. Thank you.
Alright, before I get started, I just want to do a quick volume check. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
I also wanted to start by acknowledging that in our work towards a campus free of sexual violence, we also understand our complicity in various forms of oppression, and especially in the ongoing history of colonialism. So today we're gathered on Treaty 6 territory, and that's the ancestral space of the Papas Cree, and the traditional territory of the Blackfoot, Cree, Dene, Dakota Sioux, Saulteaux, and Métis Nation peoples. We also know that this acknowledgement is only the beginning, and there needs to be ongoing efforts to respect the sovereignty of Indigenous people. So my name is Katrina, and I'm here from the U of A Sexual Assault Center. So I'm just here to talk about sexual assault and consent, to answer any questions, and to talk about some of the myths about sexual assault that we have in our society. So I wanted to start by telling you a little bit about our center. So our center has been around for 25 years, providing support services and doing workshops about the issue of sexual assault. So we're located on the second floor of the Students' Union Building in room 275. It's across from the health center, and it's down the side hallway. It's the third door on the left. So we provide support, advocacy, and accompaniment to anyone who's experienced or to anyone who knows someone who's experienced sexual assault or abuse, relationship violence, sexual harassment, or stalking. And this can be an experience that's happened recently or one as far back as childhood. We have two main support programs. The first is an anonymous and confidential drop-in service. So what that means is that when someone walks into our center, they don't have to give their name, and they can talk to someone right away about what's going on for them in that moment. Support services can also be accessed over the phone or via email. We also have a psychologist on staff who can provide more comprehensive and long-term therapy to survivors of sexual assault and abuse specifically. And lastly, we do know that it can be very difficult to reach out for support, so we strive at our center to be a safe place for everyone. That's people of all genders, sexualities, races, abilities, bodies, and spiritualities. One of my goals today is to create a safe space to talk about this issue. So I hope that you all feel comfortable making comments and asking questions in a respectful way. One way that I'm going to try and create this kind of space is by using inclusive language, so I'll be using the word partner instead of boyfriend or girlfriend, using gender-neutral pronouns, and I won't be making assumptions about people's gender. Another way I'm going to try and create this more comfortable space is by adding touches of humor throughout the presentation. So I know that sexual assault is a serious issue, but I also know that humor can be really helpful in talking about a heavy topic, and that it can also be a really helpful learning tool. So know that I'm never making light of the issue itself, but feel free to laugh if you find something I say or something in a video humorous. And finally, because I do know that this can be difficult to talk about for many people, I encourage you all to do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself, whether that's zoning out or doodling or leaving the room, and you're welcome to go grab a drink or use the bathroom at any time. At our center, we feel that having conversations about sexual assault are important for many reasons. And one of the reasons is that sexual assault is common. So we can see from our current environment and the Me Too movement, and the large number of people telling stories about sexual assault, that it is prevalent in our society. So a study done here at the U of A in 2001 found that 1 in 5 students had already experienced a sexual assault, and the average age of the participants in the survey was 20 years old. This is reflective of national statistics, which find that about 1/3 of women, so 39%, and 12% of Canadian men have experienced a sexual assault since the age of 16. Among all survivors, Black people, people of color, Indigenous people, and transgender, non-binary, lesbian, gay, bisexual people are all 3 to 6 times more likely to experience sexual assault. So ultimately, what all these statistics mean is that all of us are likely to know someone who's been affected by sexual violence, even if we're not aware of it. Also, according to a Statistics Canada report in 2017, 64% of people who experience sexual assault talk to their friends about it. So what this means is we're not just likely to know someone who's been affected by sexual assault, but we're also very likely to have someone in our lives come to us for support. So hopefully this presentation not only gives you a better understanding of sexual assault and consent, but also provides you with some ideas and some tools to help support people who might come to you. And also just a reminder, if you ever do feel like you need more information on how to be a good supporter, you're welcome to come to our center at any time as well. So now that we've talked about why it's important to have these conversations, I wanted to start by going over a few definitions. So since the presentation is on sexual assault, it's important that we define it. So sexual assault is defined as any form of sexual contact without voluntary consent. So that can involve forced or unwanted kissing, fondling, vaginal penetration, anal penetration, or oral sexual contact. So this definition is a lot broader than the term rape, which typically only refers to penile vaginal penetrations. So sexual assault can include rape. The two terms are not synonymous, as sexual assault also includes any other form of unwanted sexual contact. That being said, each survivor has the right to choose the words they feel most comfortable with to describe their experiences. So some might call what happened to them rape, while others might use the term sexual assault, and that's absolutely okay. So obviously a big part of this definition is this concept of consent. So one of the goals of our presentation in the campus community is to create a consent culture on our campus. So we define consent as a voluntary, ongoing, and conscious agreement to engage in sexual activity. So it's choosing to have sex because you really want to. And I'm going to unpack the concept of voluntary, ongoing, and conscious. So first, voluntarily means that we're freely and we're willingly giving our consent, right? We're saying yes because we really want to say yes. A yes that is obtained through coercion is not voluntary and is therefore not consent. So coercion is often used in acquaintance sexual assaults, and that's when someone sexually assaults someone that they know. And coercion involves one individual using pressure, threats, or intimidation in order to get the other person to give in or submit to sexual activity. So many people don't think of coercion as forcing someone because when we hear the word force, we typically think of physical force or physical violence. But people can be forced through non-physical means as well, and I have a short video to kind of show how coercion might work in a sexual assault situation.
For an answer. And I don't mean asking your partner and checking in again afterward to see if they've changed their mind. That's natural communication. This is about someone asking again and again and again, 10, 20 times, until the other person submits. In terms of threats, something we often hear about is blackmail. For instance, imagine someone is in a same-gender relationship who hasn't told some of the people in their life about their orientation. Well, the other person might use that information as leverage to get their partner to do something sexual that they don't want to do. Sometimes coercion involves intimidation, where one person purposefully causes the other to fear them by doing something like punching a wall or making violent gestures and remarks in order to make the person go along with what they want.
So along with understanding that consent has to be voluntary, it's also important that consent is ongoing. So an important thing to remember is that everyone has the right to change their mind. So, for instance, if I text my partner during the day and I say, hey, let's have sex tonight, but then when I get home after school, I'm just not feeling like it, no particular reason, I just don't want to. Do I still have to have sex? No, right? I don't have to have sex even though I previously said that I would. Even in the middle of intercourse, people have the right to change their mind. The final thing to note about the definition of consent is that it has to be conscious, right? Like we have to be able to consciously make a decision about what we're about to do. So there are many situations in which someone is incapable of giving their consent. For example, if they're unconscious, sleeping, highly intoxicated, or high. So most people understand how someone can consent to sexual activity if they're unconscious or sleeping. But at our center and during these presentations, we get so many questions about alcohol and sexual assault. So I'm going to take some time to talk about it, and I'm going to start with another video.
The main thing to understand is that there's a clear difference between drunk consensual sex and sexual assault involving alcohol. In drunk consensual sex, the people involved are willingly and actively participating. It may not be the best sex they've ever had, it may be kind of sloppy, but it's not sexual assault. In sexual assault involving alcohol, however, there are two general situations that tend to take place. In one, the person is not actively participating and will be showing some form of non-consent. The other situation is when one person is too drunk to give consent. This might involve someone slurring their words, maybe stumbling around, or passing in and out of consciousness. Whatever cues they're giving you, it's going to be clear they aren't able to do much of anything, much less consent to sexual activity.
Ultimately, it's up to each of us to ensure that the person we're with is capable of consenting to sexual activity. As the video mentioned, there are some signs we can look for to kind of gauge the situation. So if someone is stumbling around, passing in and out of consciousness, they're slurring their words, maybe they're even vomiting, these are all really clear signs that that person is too drunk to consent. If we ever find ourselves in a situation where we know a person is too drunk to consent, or we're unsure whether or not a person is too drunk to consent, we need to not start or initiate any sexual activity until they are clearly sober enough to consent. If an individual does have sexual contact with someone who is highly intoxicated and unable to consent, that person is committing a sexual assault. When we think about alcohol and sexual assault, we also tend to focus on whether or not the survivor was drinking, but not on what the other person was doing. Ultimately, or unfortunately, many perpetrators intentionally use alcohol in order to make it easier to commit a sexual assault. So some use alcohol to incapacitate the other person. In fact, most people don't realize this, but alcohol is the most common form of date rape drug. What we mean by incapacitate is that one person is using another person's alcohol consumption to control the situation and make sure that this person is not able to respond in the moment. So others drink alcohol themselves in order to gain liquid courage, to make it easier to do something that they already wanted to do. In other words, they use alcohol to reduce their own inhibitions and hesitations about that line they're about to cross. So to summarize what we've said about consent up until this point, we can think of consent as both a right and a responsibility. So we all have the right to either consent or not consent to sexual activity and to have that choice respected by our sexual partners. On the other hand, we also have the responsibility to ensure that we're paying attention to our sexual partners and respecting their boundaries. But to respect people's boundaries and what they want and need in each moment, we need to know what to look for when it comes to consent. So research has found that only 1 in 3 Canadians understand that consent is affirmative and ongoing. So that is an active yes. So let's talk about ways that people can communicate affirmative consent if they are consenting. So there are many ways that people can communicate that they are consenting. They could verbally say something like, do you just want to make out right now? Or they could display consent through their behaviors, like moving towards a kiss instead of away from one. So whether it's through physical communication or verbal communication, communicating consent is just saying, yes, I want to do this. This feels good. I feel comfortable and safe. But there are also many ways that people communicate they're not consenting, and I'll break it down into verbal and physical behaviors as well. So verbally, a person might say, no, stop, I don't want to, slow down, all sorts of things, right? But people can say no in indirect ways as well. If someone says, I have a lot of homework, let's just watch TV, I have a partner, I have to go home, these are also all communicating that no, I'm not consenting. People also communicate lack of consent through their body language or their behaviors. So a person might push the other person or try to leave, or even just turn away to create a little bit of distance. Someone might try to keep their clothes on, or just not move and be completely silent. Not responding or saying anything at all is saying no. There are a lot of reasons that someone might not use the word no, and it's important to understand that we don't have to say no to communicate that we're not consenting. For example, what if someone asked me if I wanted to have sex at the end of the date and I said next time? What does next time mean? It means not now, right? In any other social situation, we understand that next time means not now. No one would mistake next time to mean I want this to be happening right now. In this example, if the date moved forward with sexual advances, it's not because they misunderstood what next time meant. It's because they chose to disregard it. When someone sexually assaults another person, it's not about misinterpreting what they were communicating. It's rather because the one person ignored or did not pay attention or did not care about the ways the other person communicated no. It's the difference between a person noticing the ways that someone's communicating no, saying next time, or pushing away, or not moving at all, and choosing to stop, and another person noticing those exact same signs and choosing to continue anyway. In Canada, we have a legal standard for affirmative consent. So this means that consent is more accurately described as only yes means yes, rather than the more common phrase, no means no. Now we're going to move on to talk about how to support people who might come to you with experiences of sexual assault. So when we talk about support at our center, we focus on three important concepts: listening, believing, and exploring options. And these are things that everyone can do when supporting someone in their life. So first, we want to create a space where the survivor can talk about their experiences without interruptions, as that can be really powerful for them. So active listening means that you're giving this person your full attention. And listening can also involve silences, and that's perfectly okay. When it is your time to talk, one thing you can do is let them know that whatever they're feeling is okay, and that it makes sense that they have been affected by what's happened to them. And although it's common to want to ask a lot of questions when we're supporting someone that we care about, it's important that we only ask questions that clarify what they're already telling us. We also want to stay away from why questions that maybe might unintentionally blame them for what happened. So, for example, even a question as well-intentioned as, why didn't you tell me sooner? Puts them in a position where now they have to defend their actions to you. Many survivors are also afraid that no one will believe them or that they'll be blamed for what happened. So it's important that you communicate to a person you're supporting that you do believe them. As supporters, it's also likely that we may know the person who sexually assaulted them. Right? 85% of sexual assaults are acquaintance sexual assaults. So it means that the survivor knew this person. They were maybe a classmate or a partner or a friend. So in these situations, it might be our instinct to want to believe that the survivor is lying rather than believe that the person we know is capable of committing sexual assault. We may choose to believe it was just a misunderstanding or that the survivor just regretted it after the fact. It's important to work against this instinct and remember that anyone is capable of sexual assault, even good people, and that includes the people in our own lives. So always remember that the clear majority of people are telling the truth about being sexually assaulted, and it can be very difficult to tell someone when they're worried that they won't be believed or that they'll be blamed. So we can all do our part when we start by believing. Another thing you can do with the person you're supporting is explore options. So a lot of us may have the sense that there are things that a survivor should do after experiencing a sexual assault. But if we take the time to kind of ask this person what they'd like to do, it can be really helpful in restoring a sense of control and choice after a situation where their sense of control was taken away. So some options you could explore could be coming to the Sexual Assault Center here on campus. You could also phone the 24-hour crisis line offered by the Sexual Assault Center in Edmonton. You could seek medical attention. They could tell someone about their experience, right? So this can include reporting to the Edmonton Police Service, include reporting to University of Alberta Protective Services. They can come to our center and fill out a third-party anonymous report. They can also choose not to report at all. They could also tell a residence counselor or another staff member that they trust. And there are different ways that the Dean of Students Office or other support services on campus can help them. And if they don't want to make a formal report. And if anyone would like more information on reporting options or different people that you can tell or different supports that are available, you're welcome to come into the center and talk to us about it. So a survivor might also choose to do nothing at all, and that's totally fine. It may look to us like someone is doing nothing, but just getting out of bed, going to school, going to work can be doing an incredible amount. And if someone does want to stay in bed for a few weeks, that's okay too. It's just about respecting what feels right for that person in that moment. Always remember that you don't have to have all the answers as a supporter, and if you ever need support yourself, it can be really tricky to support someone, and it can have an incredible emotional impact on supporters as well. The center is available for you. So, the last part of our presentation, I want to shift gears a bit and talk about preventing sexual assault. So traditionally, when we think about preventing sexual assault, we think of safety tips, right? Maybe for women to follow, things like don't walk home alone at night, always cover your drink when you're at a bar, that sort of thing. But let's think about what these tips are really saying. So when we tell someone to cover their drink at a bar, what we're communicating to that person is that they're responsible for preventing their own sexual assault. What's worse, if a sexual assault does happen, the same person could be blamed for not following all the rules closely enough. Second, we can see how these tips are usually based on stereotypes about sexual assault. For example, the stereotype that sexual assaults are perpetrated by creepy people in dark alleys informs tips like, don't walk home alone at night, always use the buddy system when going out, don't accept drinks from strangers. But the reality is that most sexual assaults are perpetrated by someone that the survivor knows, and in these situations, none of these tips are going to keep us safe. People can and are sexually assaulted by the friend they went to the bar with, or the person who offered them a ride home, or an acquaintance who was pressuring them to drink more. So although tips are meant to help keep people safe and prevent sexual assault, they actually do the opposite. And that's because they hold the wrong person accountable for preventing sexual assault, and they maintain stereotypes about sexual assault. That being said, it's obviously so important for all of us to be able to feel safe in our own lives, and making personal safety choices is not doing anyone any harm. The thing about personal safety, though, is it's going to look different for each person, and so when we pass tips on to friends and family, we're actually being harmful. And that's because tips blame survivors and maintain stereotypes. And the other side of this is that we're not holding people accountable who commit sexual assault. We're not holding them accountable for their own behavior, and we're not addressing the realities of sexual assault. So, at the end of the day, all that I'm asking is that we be a little more critical about the impact that passing on tips has. So, if we take away from this presentation some new information and change the ways that we all think and act in regards to sexual violence, we will be one step closer to a world-free of sexual violence. So if any of you are interested in talking more about what we can do to intervene in situations or learn more about support, we ran a few different workshops about those things, so you can leave your email on the back of the evaluation form. There's one up here if you don't have one. The evaluation also has a few questions that you could fill out. They only take a minute, and it really helps us continue to do the work we do at the center. And once you're done, you can hand them in at the front. The other handout is yours to keep. And while I'm collecting them, I'll be hanging out for a minute. So if you have any questions, I will see you. So thank you so much for having me. Thank you for listening.
说白了啥也干不了。I have increased competency, but it is I increase my knowledge of community sports and resource available. Overall, the presentation was effective.
So take your time, look at the evaluation. When you're done, please bring it to the front to now. And the lecture will start at 8:40. So if you start your form up, you want to take the slides. I'm going to take 8:45. We'll start at 8:45.
就不好说。
为了混40分，哎呀，我直接拿全免费
你们讲课。The facilitator， 什么是 facilitator？ 你知道这个词啥意思？最后一个 facilitator， 我还没看到呢。服务商、帮助者 ，facilitator，
促进者。
是我咋知道？
是那
Did you visit feel safe? Did you refer someone to ours? Very good. The presentation is amazing. 然后再把事情 看到买北了。
他还有
或者，哎呀，你45才上回考啥题？
主要这个，
你还没写完呢。本科呀，给他打。做实验啊。哎，当时那 quiz
我每次就得给他。
对呀。
不好整。
关于什么？
哎呀，你要写那个，到时候你关心一点，我还是会抓住。
幸亏脑子有壳儿，我操！科学，我真没摔坏吧？我操！武汉凉？空气指数
为什么是武汉？
我也不知道，为啥是武汉？这还太远。埃德蒙顿有没有空气指数？哎，刚怎么看空气指数啊？这么牛逼啊！太原21，我才妈4度，我操，真妈冷！
高级车更贵。
我妈看这点儿完了，我操！哎，怎么点出来的？那个好牛逼啊！语音播报。
这兄弟是学数学的，
牛逼吧！问大佬你坐哪？
那这就可以他妈统计类的，可以培养。
斯巴拉耶，看这边长得是个不像，这个逼我操！大佬你坐哪？
等下还去求那个3、5个老师先跪下来，不求你了。
让我看瞅见了，上了些 quiz， 上了些 quiz， 我操！
为什么给有的人发，给有的人他妈每个人都发
？TD 是每个人都发呀。哦，我知道了，他想改时间。他想改时间。他想，你昨天没收那个邮件？
啥邮件？
就说能下午上课。
什么时候？
就昨天嘛。
谁发的？
他发的。
我没收到。哪有？
我他妈就收到了。
哪有？我不知道。昨天我没有啊。
那我不知道，给你学校邮箱发的没有？我收到了呀。
你把你的给我看看。
哎呀，不信你还我操！现在给你看我操！ 让你心服口服。就这有香的。嗯，这个老师叫啥？哎，看发现香真的看，哎，发有奖，就是。咋？
你下午能上？
我3点半。Thanks。
下午能上？
不是这个，我操！
我咋不知道？不是什么？
不知道，可能就给我发了。然后他收到几个不行，他就不带给别人发了。反正有一个不行，他就不能换呀。
我也没收到呀。我也没收到。
Why are you taking cmput396？是教授。哎，教授非常好。啊？
要不要上课去？
听说。
我说这个。
瞧，我已经写上了。他别写我。What has been your favorite uni course？ 什么是 uni course 呀？第二个问题啥意思呀？第二，写这个啊？那什么叫 uni course？ 单独的一个课程？不是，这什么玩意儿啊 ？uni。第二个看不懂。uni 不是那个软件吗？单个。大学课程，我操，真丢人 ！University course 的缩写了。Why？
最喜欢的课程，我印象最深刻是上那个路。
切，
最讨厌的课毫无疑问在讨论。
Favorite board game？
我还比较喜欢马切尔，简单。
大老师这都不来了，说是要。 帮别人听课。
Tell me a little bit about you.
嗯，
企业类游戏，
你会什么棋的游戏？牌子棋类，哎，也算其实。地主。
Tell me a little.
操，20 words 我操。不记得。
All right, let's begin. This is Compute 396. Welcome. Let's just quickly go over the course outline. Okay, so I believe the official title of the course is Topics in Computing, but for this semester it's going to be, the topic will be games, puzzles, and algorithms. So this course is about the algorithms that will allow you to write programs that play games or solve puzzles or solve games. By puzzles I mean activities that can be solved by a single agent search. So for example, finding your way through a maze, solving a sliding tile puzzle, solving Rubik's Cube. Those are all single agent search. And by games, I think we're talking about classic board games. So I'm not interested in video games in this course. I'm interested in board games, such as chess, Go, chess, games like that. So those are all games where you're going to write a program to play the game. The algorithms that you're using come from a field known as two-agent search, which is more complicated than single-agent search, so that's when we start talking about puzzles before we get into games. So prerequisite, you can take this course only if you have taken some computing course that's 200 level or higher. There's no text for this course, so the only resources will be the web notes. The web notes that you see here are from the last time I taught this course, which was 2 years ago. It was a new course started in 2016. At the same time, we also introduced a follow-up course, 496. So these web notes are a little out of date. I will be modifying them as we go along. If you want a good idea of what the course is about, you can take a quick look at the web notes, but be advised that some sections will be dropped and other sections will be added. How will you be evaluated? There will be 5 assignments. They are due on September the 18th, October the 2nd, October the 16th, October the 30th, and November the 27th. 3 marks each for a total of 15. There will be 4 in-class quizzes, September the 25th, October the 9th, October 23rd, and November 6th. Those quizzes are each worth 12% of your final mark. Then the final exam is worth 37% of your final grade. And it's 3 hours. If the Faculty of Science approves, you have to miss the final exam, and the Faculty of Science decides that your reason for missing the final exam was a good one, then the Faculty of Science will give you permission to write a deferred exam. And under those cases, the exam will take place on the 7th of January at 9 o'clock in the morning, and after class at 3:52. As you are aware, you've probably seen this before, U of A is committed to the highest standards of academic integrity and honesty, and what that means is, when we give you a grade, we want that grade to be meaningful, and it's not meaningful if you have broken the rules in some way to get that grade. So, as a U of A student, you're expected to be familiar with the code of student behavior. Just for interest, how many of you have ever clicked on this link right here? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I'm showing you folks something new and secret. Before we get into this, any guesses as to what topics? Give me a topic you think might be mentioned in the code of student behavior. Yeah. Plagiarism. In other words, any other? Yeah.
Respect.
Respect. Okay, we'll see if that's there. Another word. Yeah. Cheating was there. Another word. Appeals. Appeals. Discipline. Give me an obscure category that's a violation of the student code that you think no one has heard of. Discuss with your neighbor.
这个时候咋了？就是你那个写错的那个
啊，
好好的 register 被写成了啥？一个看绝壁不在沙点上，还那个搁那里
497了。
Let's see what we got here.
人多少？
Okay, so there's rights. Interesting. Rights of students, that's way too long. Holy smokes. Okay, so as you can tell, the Faculty of Law at the University of Alberta is fantastic. It had a lot to do with the draft of this code. Whoa, malicious code. Offensive, let's go. Here we go. Plagiarism, cheating. Lots of different ways of cheating. Misuse of confidential materials. Research and scholarship misconduct. Inappropriate behavior in professional programs. We are not a professional program. We're just computer scientists. Inappropriate behavior towards individual groups. Disruption. Discrimination. Dissemination of malicious material. Retaliation. Unfounded allegations. Violations of safety or dignity. Hazing. Inappropriate use of university property and resources. Damage to property. Unauthorized use of facilities. And that's just before we get to others. Alright, so take a minute later on. You're not going to take a minute later on. I'll just do it now. Alcohol solution consumption, recent rules, external to the code, identification, you can't pretend to be somebody else, misrepresentation of facts, once people start asking questions, you can't lie, participation in events and smoking. Interesting. Bribery. I get that a lot. Okay. Okay. Any questions on the code of student behavior? Okay, so that is the general information. That was the course policies. All right. So there are departmental course policies. We will follow them with a few exceptions. Assignments. For the assignments, which are worth 3 marks each, 5 assignments for a total of 50%, you are allowed to work in groups. You can work in groups up to size 4. When working on assignments, we're going to follow the department's consultation collaboration policy. So collaboration is a big issue because we don't want you to cheat. Right? If you submit a work, we want to know it's your work and not really someone else's work. But we want you to learn. And sometimes people learn best by discussing things with other people. So, on the assignments, you are allowed to discuss questions with students not in your group. However, we need to know that such a discussion has taken place. So when you hand in your assignment, you have to summarize and acknowledge any such discussion. And that has to be done both ways. So if someone asks you a question and you talk to them about it, how would you go about this? Do you think this algorithm will be good or that algorithm will be better? And then they go away. When you hand in your assignment, you also have to acknowledge that you had that discussion. Failure to acknowledge such discussions is a violation of the student code. Any questions about that? Yeah.
Would you have to refer to them in name on the assignment?
Yeah. there were classes size 2, I could deduce who it was. Okay, so here is one way in which, in this course, the policy will differ from the departmental policy.
So what if you write their name but they forget or something? Are they going to get penalized?
They have committed a code violation, so we will be talking to them. What happens after that is not your problem. Yes.
How large of a collaboration would have to be before you have to acknowledge it?
Be reasonable. So give me an example.
So let's say my friend Jan here asked me, hey, for question B, is it just asking us to send a pointer, or are we sending the full item?
Okay, did everybody hear that question? With your neighbor discussed, do you think that needs to be acknowledged in the assignment?
一个问题嘛 ，send pointer 还是 send for item？
对啊，这
你妈当然有区别。send pointer 是 send 那个地址啊。你看，
现在这是啥？男的不要说。
应该没问题。neighbor。
像我们让你们这445那个的时候嘛，都一样查的。
是啊，那次，那次我要抄的。
都网上一个网址找出来，所有人一起看。
啊。
这样子。
Alright, so you don't have to have it, but we still Yeah. How many people think that there does not need to be an acknowledgement? Let me rephrase that. How many people would acknowledge that discussion? How many people would not acknowledge that discussion? Okay, so the answer I would give is it depends. And here's why. Suppose the best way to do that question is with the way we suggest. And suppose I get 100 solutions to that assignment. There's only one best answer, and that's the way you suggested, and there are only 2 people who did that. So in that case, I'm going to be upset if I find out that there was a discussion and no acknowledgement. On the other hand, if it's something that everybody should have known, or does know, and if it's really just a question of clarification, then there's no problem. But if in doubt, if you're asking a question, hey, should I acknowledge the discussion? You've already answered it. Yes, you should. If in doubt, do it. Get used to acknowledging other people's decisions.
We assume that any course discussion is automatically consulted, or should we course discussion because there is a course discussion on this.
You should make a note that you reference it. There are only 5 assignments. It's good practice to get used to acknowledging any assistance you receive. When I write an academic paper, you're always giving sources and acknowledging any assistance you got. Any other questions? Okay, so here's one way in which this class policy differs from the departmental class policy, and that is for late or missed assignments. If your assignment is late, or maybe you forgot about the assignment, or maybe you forgot you were taking this course, and you did not hand in your assignment on time, the assignment will not be graded, and you will not get any marks for it. However, those marks will be moved to the final exam. Right? Suppose it's cold, and you're snuggled in bed, and you think, I don't want to get up and hand in my assignment. You just have to. You'll just move away to that assignment to the way to the final result. Any questions? Yeah.
Quizzes as well.
Oh, we're not there yet. That's a good question. You're thinking about it. Yeah.
Is it just one assignment or all?
Every single assignment. Some people, they love the thrill of 100% fine. So yes, you can miss quizzes for any reason. And you don't even have to tell me. You can think, oh wow, I got this fantastic excuse. My cat jumped on the table, and then the table broke. You know, you can want to know. But you don't need to give me that excuse. Just don't show up, and the weight of the quiz will be automatically transferred to the weight of the final exam. However, if you show up and you start to write the quiz, you cannot then decide, well, you know what? I should speak I'm sorry, but in that case, you have to hand me your
期末肯定很难。
Here are the final grade cutoffs. A plus 90, A 85, A minus 80, B plus 75, B 70, B minus 65, C plus 60, C 55, C minus 50, D plus 35, E 40. Any questions? Yeah. I don't know, Google. I'll probably not be using a Dropbox. We'll see. I will cross that bridge later. Okay. Any questions about official course policies or anything else? Going once, going twice, and gone. Okay, so let's talk about what will be in this class. Actually, before I do that, let me tell you a bit about myself. Why am I teaching Compute 396 instead of sleeping? The answer is we wanted to make this course accessible to lots of people. So we didn't want to clobber any other classes that were important, so that's why we scheduled it at 8 o'clock. My favorite university course was probably a second-year group theory course, University of Queens. Favorite board game? My favorite board game is a game called Hex. So on the back of your handout, you should have this figures like that. So those are all boards for this game called Hex. How many of you have heard of Hex before? How many of you have not heard of Hex before? Excellent. Okay. So, 2 players. Each player has a color, either black or white. You can see that the board, the 4 sides are each colored either black or white. If you are the player with the black markers, you will own the black side. If you're a player with the white markers, you will own the white side. On a turn, you can take any unoccupied cell, and on that cell you can put a marker of your color. Your goal is to join your 2 sides with the path of markers of your color. Right? So the next thing about this game is it's impossible for it to end in a draw. Any questions about the rules? Okay, so right now, with your neighbor, pick a board and play a game of Hex.
没有吧？太早了，查一下。这是什么手机？
这是一个游戏嘛，他特别牛逼，
对，
他世界顶尖。
对，
这个人，他手底下一个小组专门做这个。
不是去年拿的世界第1嘛？
Hex，一
验
个都
格式
查到。
什么？你看怎么查都不知道。
旗，妈的旗在哪儿？
你他妈！
六角旗 AI 初步设计，我咋点一个关一个了？
这个吧。
六
是这吗？
是给他们读啊。
规则是什么？
你先看呢。
此图中红胜六连旗有2个人一起玩，有2种颜色，通常为红蓝或黑白。4个边平行填上2方的颜色，双方轮流下，每次占领一处空白格，在空白格上放自己颜色的棋子。最先将棋盘属于自己的颜色边连成一条线的一方为胜。
连成一条线。就是其实是相当于这个。
连成一条线啥意思？必胜线路。那该白的了吧？白的连一条线连这儿，这跟那个大姐对他说
这个是可以斜着连。
他一开始说是双方的颜色，
他一开始要排到4边形上面。比方说这边去，哎，
在空白格放上自己颜色的棋子，或填上自己的颜。那跟这个边儿有啥关系啊？
他一开始说这4个边上面填上自己的棋子是
4个边儿填。
对啊，他说4个边
就一开始必须走四个边儿，
走在边上，然后必须得自己的颜色，是这意思。
一开始必须，那这个黑的怎么走这儿？
对啊，那黑的不应该走这儿吗？
对啊，不是应该说第一次吧？应该说
第一次必须要，是吗？
我不知道，
它上不是填满吗？
不知道，太难了。
这个游戏。
我操，这他妈是看一看
是这个6角国际象棋吗？是这个吗？
这啥呀？我
天，这是什么？
是 Switch 上还有这个游戏呢？
是国际象棋的变体吗？是这个东西？
是吗？不是吧？那也有点难吧？
不是，不一样。你刚刚查到这个词条是什么词？
就汉棋吗？对，叫什么
？Hex 叫6连棋吗？
我操！妈的，不会玩儿，不会，好难啊！还上场一打。看你这样看，这个他妈这老师一看太惨了。
有点搞笑，我操！上来先让别人讲的时候讲，然后休息一下就休息，等他妈9点钟就没了，我操！
拖时间了，考试也可以不用来。
这个老师又不想早上上课，老师看出来。